Along the shore, the cloud waves break. The twin suns sink behind the lake. The shadows lengthen in Carcosa. Strange is the night where black stars rise and strange moons circle through the skies. But stranger still is lost Carcosa. Songs that the Hyades shall sing, where flap the tatters of the king, must die unheard in dim Carcosa. Song of my soul, my voice is dead. Die thou unsung, as tears unshed shall dry and die in lost Carcosa. Casilda's Song in The King in Yellow, Act 1, Scene 2. From The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. Original publication, 1895.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hi everybody, welcome to Alive After Reading, and I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter. And I am today here to read some poetry because honestly, I love poetry, and I just want to say before I get started that these poems are not ones that I really wrote. They're poems that I found today. Because you see, I've written a lot of poetry, or a fair share of it anyway, not a lot recently. I'm mostly a prose fiction author, science fiction and fantasy, good stuff out there for people who want to look for it. But I also really enjoy poetry, and back in college, actually it was before college, it was when I was taking a college course as a senior in high school, so it's about 12 years ago, 13 years ago now maybe, I took a special interest in some found poetry. Found poetry being poetry that is basically made from other text. And I've never done this before, but making poetry out of fiction is really fun. I'd never done it until a couple years ago. Actually, it looks like this year is when I did this, mostly. According to the dates on these files I dug out. And I thought these turned out really well. So I'm going to read from two of them. The first one is adapted, is a kind of an idea. These were both kind of adapted as lyrics. It's kind of lyrics from metal songs, because I also am a big metalhead, as you know if you've listened to the show recently. So this show will be quick. I hope you'll enjoy it. The first story, the first poem, is adapted from the story The Statement of Randolph Carter by H.P. Lovecraft. And here it is. The Statement of Randolph Carter, 2020. Hellish Legion, my God, after that silence, I know not, interminable aeons, stupefied, whispering, muttering, calling, screaming, over and over again, whispered, muttered, called, shouted, screamed, crowning horror, unbelievable, unthinkable, unmentionable. Hideous silence, strained ears listen, whispering, muttering, calling, screaming, cloud my mind, awakening in the hospital. Deep hollow, remote, unearthly, inhuman, disembodied. What shall I say? The end of experience. Whispering, muttering, calling, screaming, petrified in that unknown cemetery, crumbling stones, falling tombs, rank vegetation, miasmal vapors, well up from innermost depths, damnable sepulchre, amorphous shadows dance, beneath an accursed waning moon. It said, whispered, muttered, called, shouted, "You fool, Warren is dead." Yeah, it's pretty small, right? It's a pretty short poem. And it is based on the last couple paragraphs of The Statement of Randolph Carter by H.P. Lovecraft. You kind of get the idea of what I did there. I mean, it's very metal, right? I had some lines repeat because I thought that would be a good, a chorus thing. That's where my head was at when I made that little adaptation. So some of the lines are out of order, but mostly it follows the story as far as the order things happen. In the order in which the words, obviously whispered, muttered, called, screamed. These are the words I actually repeated a couple times. I repeated that line a few times. But all those words, in mostly that order, are in the poem, or in the story. I just cut some of them out and added the line breaks to make it kind of a poem or lyrics instead of a story, instead of a kind of semi-bloated Lovecraft prose story. And I noticed there's a lot of abstract language in that poem, because there's a lot of abstract language in the story, unmentionables, that sort of thing. Undeniably, Lovecraft wasn't a perfect writer by any means. He was also flaming racist, but I liked that version of that story, and yeah. So it's also, I like to adapt horror stuff, obviously. I read that excerpt from The King in Yellow, the epigraph from the book, right at the start of this for the cold open, and I thought that was really fun. I really like that one too, because it's got this eerie tone to it. And it's very neat to me in that way. So anyway, the other one, the last one, I did in 2019, so toward the end of 2019 probably. And it's actually quite different. It's the last few paragraphs. It's adapted from the last 3 paragraphs of a short story by James Joyce called The Dead. And this is a literary short story from the 19th century. No, 20th century, sorry, gosh. Get my years mixed up. And James Joyce I studied in school. I read this in high school, actually, the first time. And The Dead is basically a story about a poor guy who's getting wrecked, and his wife, and they're both being kind of wrecked by her past and his inability to do anything about it, or his inability to accept that he's, not the guy she actually loves. Anyway, that's probably not necessary for you to know, but if you haven't read The Dead, it's actually a really good story, and it's not particularly difficult as James Joyce stories go. It's depressing, of course, so maybe not in this time of day, in this timeline, do you want to read this time of year, rather, because it's cold and dark out a lot of the time, at least where I am. If it's summer where you are, these may not apply. So, yeah. Well, without further ado, The Dead, 2019. The party ends. Cold air chills your shoulders. Stretch yourself under sheets. One by one, we become shades. Better pass boldly in full glory of passion than wither slowly with age. The image of her lover's eyes, he told her he wished to die. Generous tears, no feeling known as love. In partial darkness, imagine a young man beneath a dripping tree. Forms draw near the region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead. No appreciation of wayward, flickering existence. Identity fading to gray. An impalpable world, the solid itself dissolving and dwindling. Light taps upon the pane. Snow, silver and dark. Obliquely in lamplight, set out westward, snow, falling on every part on treeless hills, upon the bog, into dark mutinous waves, falling too upon the lonely churchyard where he lay buried, thickly drifting, crooked crosses, headstones, spears at the gate, barren thorns, your soul swoons, falling faintly through the universe, descending of our last end upon all the living and the dead. So yeah, that is my take on that ending. And I did change a few things because I was envisioning this as a metal song, so I changed the pronouns mostly to your, because that's kind of how these things are written in metal. So you can see how an adaptation kind of works. I mean, I changed them to you and your because, for the most part, because I thought that was more kind of impactful. And it approaches the audience more. I don't know if it works or not, but I'm not a super poet. So yeah, that's where I'm at with those things. I think, I'm still pretty happy with them. I didn't realize they'd be so short, but we're still going on a few minutes here, so thank you for listening. If you have anything about found poetry, let me know. Send me an email, tim@timniederreiter.com. And you can always email the show there about anything you want to tell me about. Reach out. If you want to be a guest, reach out there too. I'll get back to you. When we start doing guests again, because this is the season. 'Tis the season to have fewer guests on the show, at least for me. I have a hard time scheduling these things, so therefore we're doing some solo episodes until the end of the year, probably. Thanks for listening. You can find my books at Amazon.com. Orphan Mage and Warrior Mage are out. That's the sequel. Warrior Mage is out. It's a nice little compilation of 3 novelettes that follow up on the novel Orphan Mage, which is high fantasy with some crazy shapeshifters in it and a lot of cool magic and action and stuff, as well as the kind of world building I love, which is often frequently kind of fractal in nature, and follows a big system as it works, because that's the world we live in. We live in a world of big systems, not a world of small farmers or anything, really. I mean, those people still exist, but here in the Western world, here in the global world, rather, on this level where I operate, where most of us are operating, if you're listening to this podcast, you're part of a big system. So that's why I think my fantasy stories are influenced by that. Anyway, so Orphan Mage and Warrior Mage are out. Origin of Storms is still out there, and it's going to be on sale soon. So on the 4th of December, that's going on sale. So definitely mark your calendar for that if you haven't already. Thought about picking that book up. And then the sequel, Science of War, of the second Forces of Empire book, is going to be out in April, but the pre-order is up right now. So thanks for listening. Go check those out, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
That tears it.